Welcome into a brand new episode of the Whole Story Podcast. On today's episode, for the first time, talking Jake of Jomboy Media. Jake, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you holding up just simply through this unprecedented time of no baseball and, of course, just everything else that's happening in the world right now?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm excited to do this. Yeah, man, it's coming back. I think that's the interesting part. I've been in New York. I moved to New York City on March 1st, which you just mentioned to me before we started doing this that you should be calling games right now, and I wish I was watching games right now. But it's been crazy, man. Moved to New York like right at the start of this, so have a very odd view of New York City, and now there's a lot more real life issues going on in the world, and protests and everything, which get involved in that, people. Like just try to talk to people, do something. You can do something. So I'm doing all right, man. But yesterday was actually pretty cool. One of my buddies got engaged, so we had like a little engagement get together over at like Pier 45 in the city, and we had some champagne and stuff. So we were out in society, and the whole time you're kind of shrugging, like, I don't know, I haven't done this in so long. Do I give you a high five? It's a lot of elbow fives. So, but I mean, all in all, man, all things considered, I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Hanging in there, definitely. Is just trying to get through the days with no baseball right now because I know your life is built around, especially the last few years, around the game. But before we get started, I just have to ask about one thing that I saw you post a couple weeks ago now. Your impression of Jeff Passan. Where
Oh
did
man,
where was that born? Where did that come from?
tough to say. We as you followed, and I appreciate you following. I mean, we just do a lot of silly stuff, and so I forget what even gave me the idea. Oh, like this is literally, so I was new to TikTok. I feel like everyone's kind of had their stages of quarantine, and one of them is like TikTok level of quarantine. And so I finally got there, and there's like the popular like Carol Baskin remix to the Savage Dance or whatever. And dude, just I had the little like something in my brain, I'd say clicked, but it didn't click. But when they say Carol Baskin in my head, it just sounded so much like Jeff Passan. And then I was like, okay, I got to do a silly Jeff Passan dance. And then I was like, you know what? Let's have some more fun. I'll do a Jeff Passan day. So I sat down at the desk. I went suit and tie all day. And again, that's we're talking levels of quarantine. That's when you're impersonating Jeff Passan, that's a level of quarantine. Um, so it was kind of funny, man. In my head, I was like, all right, I'll just kind of do the common reporter impression and just kind of talk beat to beat, and that's the news. Thank you for tuning in. And then it turned into a little bit of Jeff. He's got some funky rhythms, man. I always crack up because everything we do is natural. Like, we're not, a lot of the barstool guys are putting on personalities and things like that. There's a little bit of a WWE side to it. Me and Jimmy are always being ourselves, and man, it just kind of started happening, and it just cracks me up that, like, if you look at even Shefty, who I think you had on,
Mhm.
like, if you watch the way he talks, like, it's kind of ridiculous that reporters talk like that. Like, it just cracks me up. So passing, he uses a couple big words. He's got some spaces here and there. But yeah, he got me a DM. He sent a DM after that. He was like, okay, that was pretty good. So I was happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, this is just where right now social media is basically all we have. Now we're slowly starting to get back to normal, whatever normal is. But really, the only communication we have with one another is through social media. And this is where content creators like what you and everyone with John Boy Media right now, this is a perfect opportunity. And what I love just following you guys over the last 3.5 months is there's new content every single day for the most part. And whenever I talk with someone and they know that, I'm in like sports and involved in sports, they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, there are things to talk about. You just have to find it. Has that been challenging for you to create content every single day when there is no live sports in the background for the most part?
I think we've been all right. Again, we kind of have a unique opportunity where it's, mostly me and Jimmy doing content.
Mhm.
So we can kind of adjust as we need it. For a lot of the stuff we've done, it's been okay. Like you're saying, I mean, everything is done this way now, and this is kind of all we've known. We're not ESPN with the TV network or anything like that. So we kind of we've done a lot of remote stuff. I mean, I was in Denver for the past 3 years before this, so we've done everything remote.
Mhm.
So I mean, adapting to that was pretty easy because we had already been built off of that. The actual content itself, I mean, you're right. There are sports stories. I mean, baseball is a huge story right now. It just sucks what the story is. Um, but I think the only thing content wise that's really been a struggle has been our Yankees podcast, Talkin' Yanks, which the company was built on.
Mhm.
And I mean, there's only so much you can do about one team right now. And, we almost feel bad to our Talking Yanks diehards because that's, again, what built all of this. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's only so much Yankees news. I mean, and we've gotten through the off seasons, but, you have free agent signings, you have trades. And then, I mean, if you go October to spring training in February, the off season goes by pretty quickly. And we're kind of built for it. And we do some, season preview type stuff, et cetera, where, I mean, we're at the point where there's been no Yankees baseball in however many months. And, you can only interview the Yes Network guy so many times and things like that. So, luckily we got, the draft happened and we got to interview the Yankees first round pick, which was pretty cool. And he's everything you wanted in a first round pick. He was, smart enough with his answers, but he was still a confident 20-year-old kid. So he says he hit bombs. That's his approach at the plate. And we're like, yeah, man, I like that. So uh, for Yankees, we could really use baseball getting back. For the other stuff, I mean, we improvise and we've done a lot of interviews. And for talking baseball, which is now our biggest thing, we kind of held off on doing interviews for a while because we wanted people to tune in for me and Jimmy, and now me, Jimmy, and Trevor Plouffe. And we wanted to do a lot of interviews in person because when we're doing silly stuff, sometimes a lot of that can get lost, whether it's over the phone or something like that. And so we got our office, it's near Yankee Stadium, and the whole game plan was that when guys were coming in on road trips, hey, if you got a 7 p.m. game, swing by the office. You got to be there for 1, come to our place at 11 and then hit up the stadium. And so now it's kind of funny that, like you mentioned, we've been forced into this world of Zoom and everything. So at the same time, we sat on a lot of interviews we could have done earlier, and now it's been like, well, that's kind of all we can do. So we're finding a way. But yeah, man, I'm ready. I'm ready for new stuff. I'm ready for live sports. I've got the Bundesliga on in the background right now, and I think it's the first Bundesliga game I've ever watched.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now, you mentioned something about interviewing people over the phone or through Zoom versus in person. I've done mostly interviews over the phone and through Zoom, but there's nothing more that I love most about interviewing someone in person. What's that challenge been like for you to have to really put in your humor as well as just who you are naturally as a person in an interview when you're talking with someone for the first time or a second or third time, where you have to learn, how can I put in my humor to where it makes sense and feels right when you're interviewing someone over Zoom versus in person?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely. I mean, we want to feel out the person first. I mean, we feel like we can conduct a good, serious interview if we want. I mean, we've had a few of those where it's, we're either talking baseball or we're talking life stuff, and it's pretty straightforward. Maybe a couple jokes, so we're always a little bit silly. And we think we could do those good, but what we think, and this was kind of an early motto that we've gotten away from a little bit, but we wanted to, when we talk to MLB players, the goal was to kind of not talk baseball with them. And we wanted to talk about what they're into, what they're watching on Netflix. And I don't know. I think if we get someone that we like to push the envelope a little more, either kind of each question or whether we've had them, Jack Flaherty, who's pretty good friends with Trevor Plouffe. I mean, the first time we had him on, we were kind of nervous, man. He was one of our first big guests, and it was kind of like, hey, man, this guy's a young stud. Like, I don't know. However this goes, we don't want to blow it. Like this guy could be, you don't want to. Baseball is a brutal sport, so you don't want to say anything about a young player, but like a guy has Hall of Fame potential, literally. And so, if he could be a face of baseball for the next decade, like that's someone we just want to have a good relationship with. So I'm not going to drop the silliest joke, but now we've talked to him 3 times and his personality better. And I was able to rip him. We were what stage of quarantine we were in. Jack Flaherty was making lists. He was just in this big list phase. He was doing his so I think he made a list that would be his all-time dream starting 5, and he had Klay Thompson on it, which, I mean, you could go with a lot of bigger names, but his whole thing is like, hey, everyone can't touch the ball. I want someone who could play defense and hit an open shot, and it's fine. But I, of course, ripped him because I had to. So I was like, Jack Flaherty, who accidentally put Klay Thompson on his all-time starting 5. And, I think if I did that the first time, I think he would have been like, are you coming at me? But now that I know him and he knows me, like he knows I'm just ball busting and having a good time. So it's feeling the person out a little bit, but and I don't know, in person, it's just, you can just read body language better and all that kind of stuff. When we were at spring training, we had Austin Meadows and Ryan Yarborough, who, we wondered how they were kind of going to react, because again, a lot of our clout is still through Yankee stuff. So if they know anything about us, they probably think Yankees. And, we saw them in person and they were more familiar with us than we expected, which was awesome. But, you're hanging out, and that's the whole kind of idea behind podcasts, right? It's doing something formal while making it sound casual. And I just think in person, you get people to be themselves a little bit more, I think. But hey, we're doing it, so.
What's been one thing in the last year that you look back on? Do you reminisce a lot, by the way? I guess I'll ask that question first. You kind of think nostalgic memories at all?
A little bit. I try to, and I try to be honest. I try to get Jimmy to a little more, because we are, nostalgia's interesting, kind of with guys, because you start thinking nostalgia and emotions, and guys don't normally do that. Me and Jimmy are both pretty emotional guys, and we're open about it. So I think the bigger problem is you just get lost in the day to day. I mean, we have employees now. We're thinking about them. You get, you're scheduling things. You get caught up in the day to day that, it's hard to. Sometimes you have to, and you should, because if you're frustrated and you're sending emails back and forth, or you can't get a logo right, or whatever it may be, you lose sight that you interviewed someone awesome last week. Like if you had told us 3 years ago that in the same week we were going to interview, even, and this might come off rude, but we had great interviews with like Jason Kendall and Lance Lynn, who, are those guys necessarily Derek Jeter type names? No, but if you had told us 2 years ago that we would, have a forum where we'd be talking to those guys, like that's awesome. So I try to, and it's kind of that you want to have that chip on your shoulder or whatever to get better, and you always want to grow. That's kind of our company's mantra right now, is like, let's just grow. Whatever we turn into, we turn into. Mm-hmm. So it sounds kind of hokey talking about it, but you hear the things like, you don't want to get comfortable, or so you always want to be pushing, but at the same time, you gotta appreciate it, because it's cool stuff, man. I mean, what about you? You've talked to some huge names. That's got to be awesome.
It's definitely been, cool. For example, like what you said, to me, it's not always about, oh my gosh, I need to get the biggest name out there. To me, it's getting someone that I really look up to in the industry. So last week or 2 weeks ago, I interviewed Susan Wallman for the first time. And Susan is just an incredible person, and she's one of the best in the business. So it's just getting the chance to talk with these people, right? Either it's the first time or 10 times. It's getting to hear their story about why they are doing what they're doing, what makes them tick. I guess that will be my next question for you. What makes you tick? Because it's interesting, right? Where you could talk basketball, you could talk baseball, you could just talk sports, life in general. What's one thing that you kind of in the back of your mind makes you the talking Jake that the fans see?
Man, heavy, but I love it. I love getting into it. I don't know, man. It's part of I'd say part of my struggle, but that's kind of heavy. But I I do struggle with like finding things I really like finding stuff that I'm like crazy passionate about. I mean, the two things I have always been crazy passionate about are sports and like comedy. You know, I had I had ESPN on at a very early age and was one of those kids that would watch the same sports center like 8 times. I mean, and then outside of that, like whose line is it anyway? I was watching Saturday Night Live like way too young. I shouldn't have been watching it. So I thank my parents for letting me do that, but it probably wasn't great. Um, so I don't know, man, and that's kind of the funny part because everyone asks like, what's the goal? What's the end game? And I'm not sure. I mean, I've always loved making people laugh. Always, like every sentence I do is basically trying to make a joke. It ends with a joke somehow. Even in serious board meetings and stuff, I can't turn it off. So and I think a big realization for me was, you know, I've always been this way, whether it's in school or on athletic fields or whatever I was doing. And I think my thought was, you know, you grow up and you become an adult and you get a real job and whatever it is. And I kind of thought, you know, I wanted to do that. Like I wanted to be successful. I wanted to have, you know, a big house and big family and all that stuff. I wanted money, whatever. Um, and so I was like, you know, I'll work hard and I'll do that in the workplace and I'll climb the ladder. And I was doing a decent job of that at my old company. Um, and but it used to just be funny, man. If I met someone or I hung out with someone on the weekend or something like that, my standard line was like, yeah, you know, that's kind of my work, and I'm kind of a different person there, which is half true. I mean, a lot of people at work knew I was silly, but and then it just kind of clicked, man. Like I leaned into it more, and when we started doing this, it was just a side hobby. And then I kind of got the opportunity to go for it, even though me and Jimmy were getting really no money. But it was enough to give it a shot and see what we can do. And thank God we did it. But yeah, man, I think one of the weird things that I was having a conversation with a friend in Denver, someone that I wasn't that close with. And I was but we were just kind of letting it out. Like we were, I don't know. It was a very honest conversation. I was like, you know what would have been an awesome job for me? I would have been a great wedding DJ. And like, you don't hear people say that because I don't know. I feel like you picture a wedding DJ and it's kind of someone douchey, or, you know, you picture the movie character, like who's the wedding singer guy that shows up in the funny movies now. He was in, what was that, Old School? And he was in, or was it Old School?
Yeah, I think so.
Mitchapalooza. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of picture that one, but like, you know, I would have fun and I'd crack jokes and I'd make the old lady laugh and I'd make the kids laugh and it would be a good time. And then I kind of realized that, and it's like, hey, let's have fun with it. So I don't know. I think tying tying all that crazy ramblings together to make any sense of it, where I started was, you know, finding the stuff I'm passionate about, I'm kind of not great at. And I think that's part of what makes Jimmy and I a great pair is like Jimmy loves knowing kind of what he likes. Like Jimmy loves deep diving and being like, hey, let me find out if I like this author. Let me read 5 books by him. And I would never do that. I would never sample, like, let's say coffee. I'm a pretty big coffee drinker, but I almost have no idea what I like. When I go to Starbucks, I basically look at the board and guess every time. But I think a normal sane person would try different coffees and be like, "Oh, I really like this coffee." And that's just kind of not how I'm wired. So that's why, Jimmy, I think it's kind of corny, but Jimmy kind of says jump and I say how high, and then we figure it out from there.
Every time I go to get my coffee, it's always either ice or hot, French vanilla coffee, cream and sugar every time. So maybe I'll take your advice and try something new.
Oh no, but at the same hey, if you like it, that's awesome. Like that's my end goal. And I mean I have some of that stuff. I have sports, I have comedy. I like what else do I like? I mean, cookie dough ice cream. Like that's money in the bank. But yeah, man, for a lot of stuff, like I don't know if it's decision fatigue or if it's just a mental block or what it is, but I mean, if you laid out 5 different cakes in front of me and said, "What's your favorite?" I'd be like, "Man, those are all great." I don't know. It just doesn't kick into gear for me.
I think I'm the same way because I think a lot of times it's tough for some people to say and make decisions, but also I think it's who you are as a person because I'm the type of person that tries to find the best situation in everything, and I don't like to hate really on anything. So maybe it's also that where you don't want to put something down, even if it's an inanimate object that has no feelings.
Yeah, and it's funny. I always try to find the good in something. I always try to find, what can we walk away with that's a win, even if you're having a bad day or whatever. Because I don't know if it's just life's too short or whatever, but I try to enjoy it, and that's I think I first appreciated that. One of my first bosses was kind of a weird guy. And I don't know. I kind of it didn't click in my head. Like, so the boss above him was like the guy. Like, I looked at him and he was, he had a nice house, nice car. He did like long drive competitions on the weekends, like for golf. And I was like, man, like you're like, that guy's cool. Like, that guy makes money. He does cool stuff. I like him. And the boss, like, I think he did pretty well too, but he was just a little offbeat. And the guy who I thought was the cool boss above him, he was like, you know what? There's a couple impressive things about Jack. That was the guy's name. He was like, you know what? One of the big things is that guy never has a bad day, and and you're gonna have so many bad days. Life sucks a lot. And it's like, if you step in a puddle, are you gonna be miserable, or are you gonna laugh and text your friends and be like, wow, I'm an idiot, I stepped in a puddle? And that is me to the T.
100%. But Jake, before we wrap up, let's talk baseball. There's a lot to talk about, and like what you said, not a lot good to talk about right now. And it's kind of an interesting way. And I tweeted last night something along the lines of, I can't wait to watch 30 MLB teams to compete in 30 or 50 games for a piece of metal. And that's kind of where we're at in baseball right now, it seems. Unfortunate. And I think best case, every night I go to sleep and I'm hoping to wake up with a vaccine and that baseball is going to be playing at least 80 games. It's not happened the last 3 months. I still am waking up every morning to hope to see either a tweet from Jeff Passan or Ken Rosenthal or Evan Drellick where it's positive baseball news. Hasn't happened yet. Do you think at some point in time in the next 24 to 48 hours, we will get some sort of positive baseball news, in your opinion?
Depends your definition of positive. um, I think the biggest thing that came out, that I feel like hasn't fully been appreciated, or maybe it is by people that are, and that's the other part. Like, I'm in this every day, so you don't want to be rude to people or condescending, but like, this is literally my job to kind of be on top of this. So I think the big thing that I wasn't aware of and now is out there is the 48 games thing, that Manfred can kind of go to that, and the players would do that because the agreement, whatever they agreed to in March, the players signed off on that. So that wouldn't be like, the players wouldn't strike or hold out against that because they could be held liable, or however that language works. So when I realized that, it's like, okay, so there's going to be a form of baseball. What does it look like from there? And it just sucks, man. It sucks, and I think that's the other the other thing that makes podcasting better, is that Jeff Passan can't say stuff like that. Maybe he can soon. I mean, they played the whole MJ thing with swearing and stuff, and it was like, okay, ESPN, we do this now. But I mean, it just sucks. And then you had the tweet today by John Heyman that said, the expect the owners to come back, and the offer is it's gonna say the game's amount starts with a 5, and you're like, I mean, these people are either so far removed from the pulse, or they're just playing this long trivial game, which sucks. And yeah, I mean, there's things that you own a business, right? And for 20 years, 19 of them, you make a lot of money. And now this year you might lose money. Like, that's what other businesses go through. And I think that's just, uh, it gets lost in, the billionaires, millionaires things. And I think people are starting to get smarter about that. I think people are starting to realize that, when why does when David Price pays for the minor leaguers, and people say, well, yeah, he's got a ton of money, good thing he's doing that, but nobody says that about the owners. But now people are starting to. So I think people are starting to get more well versed in it, and that's the part that's frustrating, is that the owners are kind of acting like people are dumb. Like, they gave the same offer 4 times, and it's not, 1994. Like, Twitter exists. People can see this and understand it, and that's the part to me that's like, it just feels so disconnected from the fans.
Mhm. Now I keep asking, who's to blame here? Is it the owners? Is it Commissioner Manfred? It's not the players. It's definitely not the players. Who's to blame? And then also, if you're a casual baseball fan, if you have some sort of fandom attached to any team, but you're not a diehard fan, where do they stand right now? I think it's kind of hard. I don't know, because I'm not one of them. I think no matter what, I will first say that sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I'll take the year off from watching. But deep down, I know I'm a baseball fan. It's my number one favorite sport. I'm going to watch when it comes back. But if you're a fan that's kind of on the border, if you are a basketball, a hockey, or a football fan, number one, number two, number three, and then baseball comes, if nothing else is on, I'm not going to watch. It's frustrating as a fan that think that this could be the future, and everything that we've worked for, including yourself, to bring a positive vibe around the game of baseball over the last few years, to get new fans involved, to basically be like washed away in less than 3 months' time. It has to be frustrating for you, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it is. And that's the funny, when you step away from for a moment and you think about it. We were leaving the office the other day, and I was, we're at this exit for Yankee Stadium, and I was like, it's June 6th or whatever day it was, and like, we should have already been to, so many games this year. We should have felt the energy in the streets of a Yankee Stadium home game, and it's not there. And but again, I think, like I was kind of saying, I like to be glass half full, and everything considered with the COVID and everything. I mean, I'm healthy. Our company's still going. A lot of people have a lot worse, so that is what it is. Um, I mean, to blame for this, I mean, it's the owners. I wish I could. Everyone likes to throw Rob Manfred under the bus, and why not? But he works for the owners, so everything he's pushing is from the owners. And it kind of goes back to the business thing, for me, that, hey, these teams make money every year, and they're, when I forget which owner was, but he came out the other day and he said owning a sports team isn't that profitable. And it's like, come on, man. Like what? Like that's the guy in your fantasy football league who tells you that, your player sucks, but he's trying to trade for them. He's like, "Oh, dude, you know, uh, Mahomes is trash. I'll give you my backup wide receiver for him." And it's like, no, dude, like you want him for a reason because he's really good. And like you wanted to buy a pro sports team because it's a great investment. The value goes up on them like triple, every 10 years or whatever it is. So, um, yeah, man, just frustrating. And I think the other thing, for the players, I think people are getting smart to it. But I had someone say, like, why wouldn't they want to play more games? And it's like, for that same price, the same amount they'd make in 50 games is what they'd make in the 72 game offer that MLB offered them. And it's, we think of that from a fan perspective, like, yeah, that, we want more games, right? These guys are risking injury. They're, each pitcher is like a bad throw away from it being over. And so to risk that for 20 games for nothing, I mean, it's just crazy. Some of the fan disconnect. It's getting better, and it's a lot of the egg people on Twitter that don't have a real name or a profile picture. But yeah, man.
Well, again, I hope that we do get some sort of positive news. And I keep hoping that there is a change in the dialogue between the two, because it has to start somewhere. Because the game of baseball has worked so hard over the last few years to rebuild and to hashtag let the kids play. That whole brand standpoint of the future of the game is here, and it's here now. And I keep going back to the article that Jason Stark wrote for The Athletic, "Don't drive off the cliff." And it seems like the cliff happened 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a month ago. We could be nearing the return of baseball in the next coming days, and we're not. And I think that's really been the most frustrating piece of this is we could have had baseball, but there is no baseball yet.
And that's what I've been really impressed with in the past couple days, because I think the the first thing I think is interesting is that, let's say Passan or whoever it is drops the tweet today, tomorrow, that baseball is coming back. They're playing 72 games. First game is July 14th. Like, hey, baseball would still be first back. There'd still be a plan there. And I think, you're seeing a lot of the people that are saying, I'm over it either way. Guess what? If baseball still is the first back on July 14th, a lot of those kind of tweener people you mentioned before, they would still watch. So I think that can still kind of be a win from this. Well, again, I'm not going to start dreaming of that because I dreamed about it for too long and it seems like it's gone. But what changed this past week was Karl Ravitch during the draft. And then today, Buster Olney came out with an article that each paragraph was just like you could feel the venom coming out of them, because it's, why are we doing this? Why are we still doing this? The whole idea of the July start was so that baseball could be first, and a month of only baseball to bring back those fans and show them the young stars in this game, the Ronald Acuñas, the guys, Tatis Jr., Soto, like those guys are under 23. That whole group I just mentioned, Gleyber Torres, like there's so much good young talent in the game. Let the kids play, like you said. So I've been kind of impressed, I guess is the word, that Ravitch and Buster Olney are saying these strong words, because I mean, they don't have to, and like their careers are tied to it. And guess what? Like there's powerful people. If baseball does come back and Rob Manfred says, "Hey, I don't want Karl Ravitch doing baseball tonight at ESPN," or whatever it would be, like the world kind of does spin that way a little bit. So for those guys to put it out there and say stuff about the league and the owners like that, It's powerful stuff because for their career, it doesn't make sense for them to do that.
That's a good point. And I was going to ask this earlier. It seems like there's been this cultural shift. I've been trying to put the words together for it. And it's a great leeway to this question. I feel like a lot of those powerful people, like the Ravages, like the Buster Olneys, it seems like if you split up the last 3.5 months in half, the first month and a half, it was kind of that we know what's going to happen. We know that this is a looming of it's going to be an ugly battle between Major League Baseball and the Players Association. And then if you break up the next month and a half or so, it seems like those people, the top reporters, are letting it go a little bit more, it seems, dropping that filter and really providing this kind of look behind the ugly scenes of what's unfolding and adding this honest truth behind it. And I feel like it's definitely been a shift to where 2, 3 weeks ago, we did not see this kind of coverage. And now to see what it's unfolding, Jason Stark said yesterday, if people like us, like Jason Stark, who's, a Hall of Fame writer and spent his whole life around the game of baseball, and if he's saying he's sad about the current state of baseball, what does that mean for the fan that likes baseball, doesn't love it, just likes it? What does that say about those people? And I think that speaks volume that it's not just someone that's likes baseball. These are people that have spent careers covering the game, and they're saying these sort of things along the lines of baseball.
And it's just so frustrating because it obviously comes to money, and a lot of things in life do that shouldn't. And it feels like baseball, a lot of people, almost everyone plays little league at some point, and like every person's kind of got that attachment. And you hear that in Carl Ravage's rant about the passion and love for the game. And you also, I'll say this for the owners because they don't get a lot of defense. If you or me owned a baseball team and we, let's say some of their numbers are true, a smart businessman doesn't want to lose $100,000 for every game or whatever it is. And I get that. But at the same time, it just feels like there's either a lack of creativity or, I tweeted out this morning, I was watching the Bundesliga game, and in the first row of the stands in kind of the middle of the soccer field, where people would normally be sitting, they had more advertisements. And it's like, hey, what if Yankee Stadium, they put a giant Panasonic tarp in the upper deck? Like, would Panasonic pay for that? If not them, someone else would. And it just feels like there's so many different creative ways to still get your money. And think about the potential growth of the sport. If there was a month where it's just baseball, nothing, baseball in the Bundesliga, like baseball would crush. And like, there's exponential growth off of that if you could get the game in front of people. Because guess what? And this is the deep dark secret, is that like the MLB people kind of don't believe in the game. All this talk about the game being too long, and then they said something yesterday that was bizarre. They said that they couldn't find people to buy more playoff games. It's like, what are you guys talking about? This is what you've been pushing for, is more playoff games so you could make more revenue. Like, and when they say stuff like that, that's where I come back to, like, I think they just think people are kind of stupid, because that doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense. And I think, I don't know if this is positive or negative, but you're going to see a little bit how my brain works for a second. So the NASCAR banned the Confederate flag last week or a couple days ago, whatever it was. And it was a really interesting conversation because and there's money tied to it, a lot of NASCAR's fans, everything, etc. And I think what was interesting, what I heard, because me and Jimmy were talking about it, and like a lot of things, we kind of talk our way through it to see where we land. And Jimmy was saying how that had to be just a super tough decision for NASCAR, which sucks because it shouldn't be. I mean, it should be banned. but you get the business side of it a little bit. And just wondering out loud, I was like, I wonder if they're relieved. I wonder if NASCAR was waiting for an opportunity to do this, which again, opportunity seems like the wrong word there, but if they were waiting for the right time in the country to do this, and if you can't do it now, then you never can. So they did it, and I think I heard someone jumped on Scott Van Pelt Sports Center. I forget, I'm forgetting who it was, but he said that was kind of the feeling from NASCAR, that there were people, I think the way he phrased it were people that worked, below the higher ups at NASCAR wanted to get rid of this for a while, 20 years ago. And they just kind of had to wait until they became the higher ups at NASCAR to do it. And if I'm being honest, and I'll finally draw my parallel, is I think there's a lot of people, even like you and me included, Jomboy, and I think people within MLB that are watching, and everyone's thinking the same thing right now. Like, I get that this is a giant business, but it's also a sport. It's supposed to be something you can fall in love with, and the competition and the beauty of it. And I think I hope I'm one of those people that can fight the fight, and I can hear it in your voice too, that I think, I hope in 5, 10, 15, 20 years that we'll be looking back at this time period and saying, man, things were a mess, but now look, we've made baseball, baseball has gotten so far. They saw the NBA and NFL grow, which made sense. Those sports weren't around. They weren't big until, that's kind of the part of the MJ doc. Like those sports were growing. Baseball has kind of been around longer. And, I think MLB saw those other sports growing and wondered why they weren't growing the same way. And I don't think they can look at it like that. I think, make baseball fans, keep the baseball fans you have, and then other people will come over because the product is good, man. The product is really good right now. And, if you make the games 3 minutes shorter, I don't think that's the issue. And I think baseball needs to lean in even further because my final comparison is to podcasts. Like why podcasts have become so popular is, they have people's attention. Joe Rogan just sold for what, 100 million or whatever it was, crazy money. And it's because Joe Rogan's listeners are locked in for 2 hours. Like they are locked in, like people are obsessive about it. And I think baseball is the same way. When you yes, there are casuals who either throw it on in the background, who aren't going to watch every game, and that's fine. But there's a lot of diehards that will casually watch 140 games for 3 hours each. Like you have the most focused, intense fans out there. Play to those guys, grow that group. And I think that's how you're going to grow the game. So that was very Jake long form talking. And I'm sorry if someone tuned out some point during that.
No, I think just to echo that, I've been saying this for years now. Baseball doesn't market to baseball fans. They market to people who they want to bring into the game. And they're trying to create baseball for not baseball fans. And personally, it makes no sense to me. Like what you said, show what the game is. And if you like it, that's fine. If you don't, go watch NBA, NFL, or hockey at the end of the day, right? If you had 301 people watching versus 302, what's the true difference? I guess the last question for you today, Jake, it's one I always like to ask someone that truly loves the game of baseball. If a 15-year-old kid walked up to you right now and told you that they don't understand the game of baseball and it's boring to them, what would you say to them?
I would say, and this is another Jakeism that I stumbled into at one point, is when you watch a baseball game, you either see one thing or you see 1,000 things. And it's, let's say I'll go to my guy Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty throws a 95-mile-per-hour fastball over the corner, called for a strike. You could either see that 95-mile-per-hour fastball, which, yes, is cool. Or you see that the catcher framed it well and the hitter didn't like the call, and the ump maybe thought about calling it a ball, and the second baseman shifted over because the pitch before that was a curveball. I just think there's so many little things, like when I love when a stadium, an outfielder cuts a ball off. Like an outfielder cuts a ball off, gets the ball to second, holds the runner to a single, and then the next batter hits a single. Like that could have been a run. Instead, you have a runner on first and second, maybe. And I think that's what needs to be taught to the kids, is all the beauty of the little things, and all of the a second baseman taking a step to the left because a guy hit it there last time, or a speedy base runner is on base, and watch the effect that has on the pitcher, the catcher, the middle infielders, the batters, the outfielders. I mean, I just think there's so many little nuances, and that's I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to package that, because I want to package it somehow. I did one video. I think I actually wrote something, which if I wrote something, that means I'm passionate about it. I think I labeled it if you missed it or something like that, but it was Adam Ottavino threw a pickoff play to second base, and it was he roped it. I mean, it was coming in 90 plus from the mound to second base, and DJ LeMahieu made a nice snag. Otherwise, it would have gone into the outfield. If you don't know, if you're a 15-year-old watching the game, that's probably boring. Like, you just saw a pitcher throw to second base. Who cares? The runner was safe. It's nothing. What I saw was a pitcher turn and fire to a 6'4" second baseman. If that was your normal 5'10" second baseman, that ball could still be rolling in the outfield. The runner scores. But because it was 6'4" DJ LeMahieu, who was a great defender, he reached across his body, full extension, snagged it. And I just think things like that in baseball are beautiful, and not enough people know about it, man.
100%. But Jake, thanks so much for your time this morning to come on the Whole Story podcast. Where can all of the listeners follow you on social media, listen to your work with Jimmy and everyone at Jomboy Media as well? You do incredible work, and I've been able to call myself a fan of you guys for as many years. I know before we started, I remember following Jimmy, tweeting about working the weddings and doing photography and stuff like that. And that's why he couldn't watch a baseball game that night or something. And that's what I love about you guys most. It's not fake. It's not this product that you can't really buy into, because you can buy into your product. And I think that's what I like most about the content that you guys put out. It's real, and I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I think everything I'm at Talkin Jake. Check it out, the Jomboy Media YouTube channel. We do so much on there. That's what I always tell people. If you like one thing we do, go check out the other stuff. Because like you're saying, I mean, it's not an act. I mean, if you like what we do for baseball, you're probably gonna like some other stuff we do on YouTube, whether it's watching baggage or whether it's anything we do, because it's the same tone. And I think that's you start to understand corny lines better when they become true, because when you hear a pitcher gets off the mound and he says, like, man, the fans were really awesome today. They really are, man. When we have our diehards, that watch everything, and they tweeted us some of the inside jokes we crack, like, that's really the best part of it. It really is. We had this guy. He's a truck driver for a living. He's been a big fan for a while, and like, we just had this dumbest of side conversations on Jomboy and Jake Radio, which is basically a podcast, just a daily, some sports, some silly stories. And at halftime, we were, again, how we got here, I don't know, but we started talking about, like, which fish is the most attractive fish. And just like this silly, ridiculous conversation. And the guy DM'd us, and he was cracking up, and he was making jokes about it. And it's like you're saying, when you reference that Jomboy story where he had to miss a game for a wedding and he was pretty devastated. Like I remember that. I remember that day for him and the people. That was probably the toughest part for Jomboy when he fully blew up. Is he used to interact with everyone, literally everyone, and he like can't do that anymore. And it bummed him out a lot at first, but it's part of the price you pay for getting where we are. And I mean, hey man, we're a legit company. We're doing some legit stuff, and hopefully more coming up.
100%. But Jake, thanks so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure talking with you this morning.
Thank you, man. This was fun. I love talking sports, man. Let's just
No,
get some.
I know it. Hopefully soon. But Jake, thanks so much.